Hi, guys. So, welcome back to another install of our interviews with healthcare practitioners who may or may not have been a part of my journey, but certainly practitioners that I think that can make a big difference in your healing journey, especially when you're dealing with chronic illness. So, I am so excited today to have, I would call her my dear friend at this point, but I'm so happy to have on Jill Zadico. She is, and I will tell you the story of how I met her, how she kind of came into my life, and what a huge difference she made in my life, especially in the beginning of my journey. But just a little background on her, and she will fill us in on her background. But she is a certified personal trainer with the National Academy of Sports Medicine, and she is also a licensed massage and body therapist. But she's also an Ondamed certified practitioner, and that is a machine that you see back there that we're going to talk about today, which I think had a huge, huge impact. So we've got a lot to talk about. I'm so excited for you guys to hear this interview and how instrumental Jill was in the beginning of my really, really tumultuous chronic illness journey and how everything came about. So welcome, Jill. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to see you.
Yes. So let's start a little bit with my story. And Jill probably remembers this, I'm sure, because she was one of my very, very early first practitioners that I ever worked with. The way I found Jill is a colleague, like a functional medicine practitioner that I was working under, had mentioned Jill to me. And she had mentioned this Ondamed machine to me. Now, to give you guys a little bit of a background, I was deathly sick at that time. I was literally crawling into her office when all of this started, and I had no idea what had happened. Most of you know my story from, the page, and I've kind of talked about it on YouTube as well, but really just had everything in the world going on at that time. Had seen 2 hepatologists, 2 rheumatologists, 2 endocrinologists, my primary care, 2 neurologists. No one could figure out what was wrong with me. And I was just having these, what I would call severe inflammatory issues, and was bedridden. And I was literally practically bedridden for a whole year. And my functional medicine doctor at the time thought I may have SIRS. And we kind of started down that path. But in the meantime, I literally went from a full functioning, like CrossFitting, like super active physical therapist to literally being like bedridden over a course of 4 months, and was bedridden for almost a year. So that's when I encountered Jill, and I, called her up and I said, look, I've been referred to you by my doctor, and it's, someone that I work with as well in the functional medicine field. And she said, I need to come see you because you have this Ondamed machine. And I said, I'm going to come tomorrow. And she said, sure. So we started the treatment, and I don't want to talk too much about the machine yet. We'll talk about kind of how it works and how, where you place everything. But I literally must have done the treatment maybe for 3 sessions. And I literally remember being able to walk down my driveway after the first few sessions. Like, that was how life-changing I felt it was. And this is after being bedridden for quite a few months at that time. And so then I continued my treatment, and I cannot remember, unfortunately, how long I continued my treatment, but I would say at least 8 months. And when I had a little bit of a relapse, I went back again to get the same treatment, and it was always very helpful for me. As a side note, how much I believe in this treatment and what she does with the machine, she'll talk more about it and how it works. But my daughter in this process ended up getting bitten by a tick. And here in North Carolina, we don't have, at least yet, they don't believe, or we don't have Lyme's quite to that degree that they have up north, but we do have Rocky Mountain fever and early chiosis, which is what my daughter ended up getting diagnosed with. Within maybe 4 or 5 days of getting the tick bite, she became lethargic, like severe muscle aches, couldn't lift her off the couch, and she ended up getting early chiosis, and she was put on doxy for 3 weeks. And so in that time, right away after the first week, I called Jill, because knowing the effects of what tick bites could do, how long they could last, I went ahead and just right away started my daughter on on this machine as well. And my daughter at the time, I want to say was maybe 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old. So, I mean, you can really do it on very young kids as well. So I tell you all this because I firmly, firmly believe in this machine and the benefits of it. So Jill, before I keep talking here, how about you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how your journey has evolved to where you are?
It's a story. I grew up in California, so I was a little beach girl and moved to North Carolina. I enjoy gardening a lot. And so when I moved here, I had truckloads of dirt brought in, and I was outside all the time. Well, I would get anywhere from 3 to 7 ticks on me a day. Most of them didn't attach, but I didn't know at that time really what I was being exposed to. It was like, oh, it's another bug, and throw it away, because North Carolina has bugs everywhere.
Right, full of bugs.
I was very, very active, played soccer, played volleyball. I was a runner. And then all of a sudden things started going downhill, and I was only 25 at the time. I'm almost 60 now. But, going to functional or going to Western doctors here, I was clinically depressed. I was a hormonal female. I was, had upper GIs and lower GIs and endoscopies because it was GERD, it was lupus, it was everything, and I just kept getting more and more fatigued and sicker and sicker. And I finally found a doctor in Chapel Hill. Unfortunately, he's not practicing anymore. He just, for grins and giggles, did a Western Lyme blot, and it came back very positive. There was seven bands.
Wow.
And he was like, well, you definitely have Lyme disease. You have an active infection, as well as a chronic infection, and don't know what to do about it. We'll send you to infectious disease. Well, in the state of North Carolina at that point in time, Lyme disease didn't exist.
Right. Sadly.
Like, okay. So they stopped at the border.
They still don't believe in it. It's so sad.
No. And they're not sure what to do with it unless it's a child and it's a bullseye is showing. Right. I never had the bullseye that I'm aware of, but it just was being my own advocate and saying, no, something's wrong. I can't go from running 12 miles, 6 to 12 miles a day. I lifted weights 5 days a week. I was a trainer at that point in time, and I had to give up that business. I was doing massage therapy and had to give up that part of it. I worked for Lifetime Fitness. I was diagnosed with adrenal failure. I got my first hip replacement at age 39. Yeah, because for me, the Lyme disease not only got my brain and neural function, it was all the cartilage as well. So I've had 2 hip replacements and rods in my spine and a plate in my neck, all due to Lyme disease.
All sequela of Lyme.
Yeah. Didn't know a lot at the time, didn't know what avenue to reach out to. Found a doctor in Florida, so I flew down to Florida. And he was very familiar with Lyme disease, had relocated with his wife from Minnesota, I believe. And he talked about a doctor that was in North Carolina. Well, I thought it was one of the doctors that everybody talks about all the time, and I was already on his wait list. But it wasn't. It was actually a functioning DO that was out in Charlotte that I went and saw. Spent 9 months out there getting IV ozone, IV chelation. I have really high heavy metal toxicity. Didn't get too much better then. Unfortunately, like a lot of us with Lyme disease, I got rooked by bad people that took basically all my money. But you get desperate. You don't know which way to turn. You don't know who to talk to. I live by myself. I'm divorced with 2 kids, and I became fully bedridden. I was bedridden for almost 4 years. and then I did get depressed. I mean, when you have a quality of life that you're so active, and I took my dog for walks and run and everything else too, I can't get out of bed. It takes every ounce of energy I have just to take a shower.
Right.
You don't really want to continue on with life at that point, but my kids were young enough that that's what kept me going. And when I went out to the clinic in Charlotte, like everybody else, I looked at this machine and went, that's the hokiest thing I've ever seen. It's just another way to take more of my money. But they scan you. So part of the process is a body scan, and you're looking at meridians and organs and then microorganisms. Well, I hadn't told them that I had plantar warts on my feet. And I had forgotten to tell them that I ended up with a hysterectomy due to the Lyme disease. And the machine showed it.
Wow.
And I went, okay.
I know that. Yeah.
There's something to this. It may not be as hokey as I think it is, but you don't really feel anything. You don't see anything. You don't necessarily feel things unless you're really, really sensitive. And so it's really hard to see how it's working. You can't take blood work and see that your rates are lowering, your levels are lowering. You just can only go based on what the machine keeps telling you. Well, I had these plantar warts because of being a gym rat, probably 7-8 years. I had a couple of them burned out. I just kind of gave up and learned to live with them. And it was one of those things that after about a month, well, that's funny, I don't have that pebble in my shoe feeling where one of the warts was. Mm-hmm. Kind of blew it off and ignored it. And a few weeks later, it was like, no, really, I need to. So I looked at the bottom of my feet because it's really hard with my hip replacements to see my feet.
Right.
They were all gone.
Wow.
They were all gone. And I went, okay, this is real. This is legit. This actually works.
Right.
I know it firsthand. And so I've been using it. I was using it on myself. I've used it for post-surgical healing, nerve damage on myself. And then I went on and really wanted to share it with everybody that was interested in trying or that had tried Western and didn't get anywhere with it. And like I tell everybody, it's not the magic bullet. It's not the only thing that's going to work. We all need to have our team that keeps us going. But it is an instrumental piece of that team for me.
Right. And it was for me too. I mean, like I said, I came crawling into your clinic. Literally, crawling in is pretty much an accurate description. Yeah. I barely walk in. Yeah. And the fact that after 2 to 3 sessions, I was able to just finally step out my door, walk out the driveway. That was a huge change for me. And I actually recall, unfortunately now, because it was such a while ago, but I remember the first time you scanned me with that machine, you told me a few things that you and I had never talked about. And that, I think that my blood markers, we had never talked about it, but you were able to tell me with that machine.
Yeah. That's why typically when somebody new comes to me that hasn't ever experienced, yes, I have them fill in the health history form like I did with you. And then I don't read it because I don't want them to think, okay, I skewed it.
Right.
And so I don't look at it on purpose. I don't want to know your history in that moment because I want you to feel confident that what I then tell you is accurate. And so I scan you first, and then we start talking.
Right.
And that's where you get to know.
About that machine, so it's basically German technology. And I remember you talking about it the first time I came, but it's German technology, and it's been used in Europe for a very long time.
Okay, in fairness, it's similar, but not the same to Reif technology, and that's not German technology. This device is German. This if you wanted to look it up, it's ondamed.net, not .com or .org, because it is German. Okay. And I've found that a lot of European technology is a little bit better than what we have access to here.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to discard Western medicine. It has its place. I've got hip replacements and I can walk again with my spine. But there's so much more available to us that
Yeah.
it's good to look outside of just Western modalities and see what's available.
Especially for
Um,
people like yourself or myself or anyone on this page, when you have exhausted every resource out there. When my
yeah,
doctor mentioned it to me, I thought for sure there's going to be no one in my area in North Carolina who has it. I looked it up and it's at Apex. I was jumping with joy. It didn't matter at that point because
yeah,
you've tried everything and
yeah,
exhausted every resource out there. So for
yeah.
me, it was like, I can't go wrong. I'm going to try one more thing.
It's not for everybody. Like I said, you need to make decisions and choices on what's going on with you. Try it, but try it a few times. Don't just try it once. It's not a it's not a magic bullet. It's not a one and done thing. Um, but I have seen some amazing stories. And when somebody's chronic versus acute, it takes longer for the body to show the signs that it's healing.
Right.
And it depends on what people are doing in their lives. Like I had a client with Lyme disease come in, and I believe he was ADD, possibly bipolar as well. And he would be drinking a regular Coke, regular, not Coke Zero, not it, but just plain old regular Coke. And he would chug a can of Coke before he walked in the door. Well, the machine is going to pick up pancreas issues, blood sugar issues. So it's going to pick up on what is the most prevalent thing in the moment.
Right.
But that's where I'm a little different than other Ondamed practitioners. I look at the whole picture.
Right.
So when I was trained to do this, you're supposed to just take the most significant signal. So in his case, it would be blood sugar. Okay,
Right.
well, that's not going to do anything for your Lyme disease.
Right.
It's and don't drink the Coke. If you're going to drink soda or something like that, just don't do it right before you walk in the door so that I can get a more accurate reading.
Right.
But what I do in my practice is look at the big picture. What all is going on? I scan you. We look at every frequency that came up so I can see a pattern. I don't, because some people with Lyme disease, it's neuro, some it's more functional. And then I really listen to the person and see what their goal is. In your case, I want to be able to get out of bed. I need to walk again.
Right.
And then there's the memory component of it. Well, I can't remember things. So I would really look at the brain, the different programs for brain, adrenals, whatever you're responding to that correlates with your goals and what is most prevalent. So if we run the microorganism module to it, and you have 6, 7 frequencies that all show parasites, I communicate that back with you because then maybe there's some herbs or you're working with somebody else that can prescribe or give you different herbal remedies to help detox the parasites. So as we kill them off, you can get them out of your body at a faster rate so that you don't build up all those toxins. So it's looking at the whole body, how it's functioning, what is the most active thing in the moment. Some clients around the full moon, 4 days before, some are 4 days after, some are dead on to that full moon, will have really active parasitic activity. The reason it's not a one and done thing too is because microorganisms have different phases. You have the eggs, and you have like a baby and a toddler and an infant and a teenager, and then the older cycles, right? And so maybe a specific frequency is dealing with more an adult microorganism at that moment. And of course, everything is trying to survive, so it's morphing and changing, and there's thousands of different frequencies for all this.
So
The
why
other
don't we
part,
do that? Why don't we explain now to the listeners basically how the machine then works? Because when you and I talk about the frequencies and what it's pinging and picking up, I get it. So
right.
tell us a little bit kind of what the machine does, what it's picking up, and then what your treatment plan is.
Okay. Well, like I had said earlier, and I'm going to move this a little bit just so you can see it better. It is similar to a Rife machine, but not. It has been programmed with only frequencies that can cause no harm. A Rife machine can be deadly if used inappropriately, but those frequencies are not in this. So this Ondamed specifically has 4 different modules to it. It has module 1 is very similar to acupuncture meridians. So we're looking at your gallbladder meridian, your kidney meridians, and making sure that the meridians, that the energy is flowing properly, like you would with an acupuncture session. Module 2 is specifically working on organs and organ dysfunction. Now, I can't tell you what is wrong with the organ, but it's just that the organ is either not functioning properly or over functioning. Heart being one of my issues. I have a lot of heart damage from my Lyme disease. I have mitral valve prolapse. Okay, well, it's not going to regrow a valve,
Right.
but it is going to, in that case, we might skip heart if it's specifically, I know I have mitral valve prolapse and without stem cells, there's not a lot we can do. So I might skip that and go to something else where my bladder, I have an active bladder infection, right? And it will bring the blood supply to the bladder area and help heal the bladder as an organ.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would go to the microorganism component and look for those bacterias and things, and specifically run the programs for those bacterias to kill off the bacteria.
Okay.
So think about if you went to the doctor and you got an antibiotic is something that you take 2 times a day for 14 days. It's not a one and done thing. So depending on what we're working on is going to depend on the frequency of the sessions. But it's real easy. What I do is this is a magnet. These are different magnets and the frequencies run. So it's a pulsed response. It's a pulsed vibration frequency. Frequencies are vibrations. And I will move this around different areas of the body depending on what area we're working on at that time, what it specifically wants. So this is what the frequencies run through.
Okay.
This I affectionately call the dog collar because it kind of looks like one. But this is how the computer talks to you.
Okay.
So as I'm dialing through the frequencies and running the frequencies, it just sits nice on your neck. It's not choking you. It's not tight. It's not stuck on there. But this is the way the computer talks to you. And then I feel for what is called a pulsed response. I'm not feeling your pulse rate, but essentially when a frequency is administered and your body wants that frequency, I almost get like a speed bump thump.
Yeah.
So I will get what they call a pulsed response.
Okay.
And so then I will mark that, which is the little dial here. That's how I get all the frequencies. And I will mark each one and then we will discuss it. Yeah. So the 4th module has to do with nutrient deficiencies or nutrient overages. And that's a separate session because then you're looking at all the vitamin mineral deficiencies or overages. And again, I can't tell you, I'm not a Western doctor. I'm not an MD, PhD. So I can't diagnose or treat. I can only tell you what the machine says. Right. And then we would make decisions based on what answers we get.
And then you would adjust the frequencies accordingly, and then that would be the treatment session for that day.
That's right. Depending on how sensitive an individual is, I can scan you feeling for the pulsed response to see if the intensity is the right level and the time, the duration that frequency runs. if you think about it like a song and a CD, so if we're doing microorganisms, it's a song and we're running one specific frequency to disrupt that microorganism.
Okay.
If I'm doing programs, it's like a CD. And so it's multiple songs that make up that CD called bladder. So the scientists in Germany have figured out how to make these CDs essentially. Does that help? Is that kind of an easy way of saying it?
Yeah, of course. And then once you do the treatment, it's almost like, can I call it electromagnetic waves? Can I call it that?
Yes, it absolutely. They're electromagnetic frequencies. Electromagnetic and frequency. So it's the easiest way I've explained it to people is think about an opera singer in a champagne glass, right? Opera singers hit all these different octaves, which are frequencies, and they will hit a frequency that will shatter the champagne glass.
Right.
So it's that kind of thing. Now your body's not going to explode. It's not going to shatter like the champagne glass. And I'm not really supposed to say it kills the microorganism. It disrupts its cell is how I'm supposed to say it. But
and just to add to that, especially for a lot of our listeners who are listening, I myself included, and I know the answer to this, but I would love for you to explain it. I myself included, when I walked in there, had so much EMF sensitivity that I could barely look at the phone and, be around EMF. Like my husband's car was an electric car, made me so sick I couldn't sit in it. So I already had all those things, but I did really well with this machine. So tell people if they all of a sudden get a little taken back by the fact that we're talking about EMF frequencies and things like that.
Well, because we're not really talking about 5G EMFs. We're talking about frequencies that have been around since before all of us were born. Even if you're in your 80s and 90s, think more like Thomas Edison. And when he invented electricity, it's sounds. I mean, we get frequency from the sun, light frequency. Sounds are frequencies. So it's really frequency and vibration. It's not EMF. So it's not like where you need to be cautious with different far infrared saunas and EMFs coming off that. There's not EMFs coming off this.
Exactly. And it's actually a healing frequency too. So for instance, if you look at like 532 hertz, that's a frequency, but it's a healing frequency. That's why people listen to beats and sounds and music at that frequency, because that helps heal. So this machine has that healing frequency versus it's producing any EMFs that are harmful.
Correct.
Oh, that's great. So I can tell you from experience, it is a very, very relaxing treatment. You actually don't feel anything at all. And I was so sick at the time. I remember just falling asleep most of the time. Half the time we would chat, Jill and I would chat a lot. And then the other half the time I would just sleep. I mean, you're just so tired, so sick, so exhausted. And you were kind enough to always have a PEMF mat for me. If you guys haven't looked up the benefits of a PEMF mat, you should look it up. Jill would put one on the bottom for me, and it was just super, super healing. And then I would do the session. Remind me again, was it about 15, 20 minutes, or is when the machine decides that it's, done everything?
The whole appointment usually is about an hour. The way I was trained, it's 30 minutes. But I really care about people. I want them to be successful. I want them to get their life back and their quality of life back. That's what I was looking for. And so that's what I try to give back. So my sessions are typically an hour, and depending on how much you can handle, we go for it. I mean, I don't just do one microorganism frequency. I might do 3 or 4.
I remember that.
And we do them over a few times to really go after it, because I want you to see a difference and feel a difference, even if it is that just slight, like you're saying. Well, I was actually able to walk down the driveway, and I hadn't been able to do that. And it's more than just Lyme disease. I've got a client right now that I'm working with that was vaccine injured from the shingles vaccine. So she's having a lot of neuro issues, and within 24 hours of getting the injection, was bedridden in a wheelchair, and now she's walking. So
Wow.
there's the neuro piece to it. I had a 6-year-old that had a spiral fracture. They essentially told her she couldn't be weight bearing for 6 weeks, was going to be in a full cast for 6 weeks, half cast, and extensive physical therapy because of where the fracture happened. I worked on her for 3 sessions. We did bone fracture programs.
Mhm.
And I said, just tell them the cast is hurting so that they'll look at it again. They took it off. They went, oh, aren't we great? It's perfectly healed. We're done. You don't need physical therapy. You're good to go. Bye.
Yeah,
Yeah, you did great. Go you. But it wasn't. She wasn't doing anything different. She wasn't doing anything else. It was this. And of course, the younger the kids are, the faster the response
absolutely,
is.
yes.
Yeah, because
My
they don't
daughter had a
have
fantastic response. Yeah.
the stuff we do. I work with a lot of PTSD, anxiety, stress people.
Mhm.
Um, the men typically like it because you're not giving them a pill
Right.
and they just nap. It makes a lot of people go to sleep.
Right. Right.
Just calms your central nervous system down and allows the body to start healing.
So, like in my case, we did, dealt with SIRS, we dealt with adrenal fatigue, which classic. Obviously it works for Lyme's patients. You said PTSD. I remember you and I once talking about a whole osteoporosis protocol as well.
Yeah,
And you've seen a lot of success with that as well. Tell us a
yeah.
little bit more about that.
The osteoporosis protocol is 10 sessions. It's consecutive.
Mhm.
Usually give the folks the weekend off, but I can do 10 in a row.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a commitment, but what you're doing is getting the cells, the blood supply and everything to the bone to get it kick-started again, to get it going again.
Okay.
Really good results with that. And that's for the folks that don't want to take some of the medications that are prescribed because of the side effects.
Right.
So, again, it's each individual needing to make a choice on what they want. But yeah, I've got folks that live in retirement homes that love it. And we might do it the first year, we'll do it twice in a year. We'll do it at 6 months.
Mhm.
And they actually then see the results when they go and do the bone density scans again.
Right.
They may not have improved vastly, but they stayed the same instead of deteriorating.
Right, which is key, and most people need to realize that if you're not getting worse with your osteoporosis, that's actually a good sign because you're not
Yes.
having more bone degeneration.
Right. So in the beginning, the initial part, it may be that you stay the same, slightly better, but not this leaps and bounds better. But at that age, usually your body has broken down so much, and that's part of why you have the osteoporosis, is your body's inability to heal on its own anyway. And that's usually folks that they probably had lead exposure or different metal exposures as a child, because back in that day, paint had lead in it, so your toys and everything had lead. Different mercury fillings. Some people have reactions to that. So it's just each individual exposures and dietary, their lifestyles, what they've done. Obviously, drinking alcohol, smoking is going to deteriorate the body, and we're going to in turn we're going to switch that off and get you going back in the right direction.
Right. And the one thing, Jill and I shared a very, very common bond over the fact that we were both like health nuts. I mean, we were just so into health and wellness and longevity, and and that brings up a really good point. Like you said, the gentleman that drank a can of Coke, like you cannot have a terrible lifestyle, whether you're smoking, drinking, sodas a day, and then expect that this machine's going to do wonders, or any other treatment for that matter.
Any treatment.
Really, like you and I very disciplined lives based on our history of chronic illness, but also just our knowledge on
Mhm.
healing and our knowledge on longevity and things like that. I do think that for me, that was definitely helpful while undergoing this treatment, because it
Sure.
really helped me. My disciplined lifestyle, the gluten-free, the dairy-free, no alcohol for at
Right.
least a 4 or 5 year period at that time. And this, that really all kind of like supplements and also almost like
Mhm.
doubles your healing, because you're giving the body everything that it needs to heal.
Right. I think something else that I do, or, where I'm trying to be helpful, is there's that gap between what we know, what doctors assume we know.
Right.
Okay, an example before I go on to it. I am a personal trainer,
Mhm.
and folks would come into the gym and they're like, oh, well, I know how to do that. I know how to do a chin up. And I'm like, all right, go ahead and knock it out. And they can't do it. And I would always say to them, why do you think you should know how to do all this? I actually went to school to learn functional movement, anatomy and physiology, origin insertion, how things move, how things grow.
Right.
You went to school to be a school teacher, an accountant, IT person. Give yourself permission to not know
Right.
and get educated on that topic. So that being said, there's that piece that, when you're going to a doctor and you're paying $600 an hour, you want the meat, right?
Right.
But if you don't know the precursor to things, you can have the meat all day long, but it's not going to do you any good. So things like coffee enemas or proper supplements for you, um, being grounded, how important that is to know. And the one that always sticks in my brain is, if you throw garbage into the garbage disposal in your sink and you never run the disposer, how do you expect it to keep taking it? So
Right.
if your system isn't eliminating properly, you're just being more toxic.
Yeah.
But nobody tells you that. Nobody, they might ask you, oh, how many bowel movements do you have in a week? And you're like, oh, one a week.
Right.
Okay, because that's kind of normal for Lyme people.
Okay.
It's not healthy. But that's what they've been 10, 20 years, right? So they think that's normal. That's their normal. Okay, well, we got to get your gut working better and your digestion working better and your elimination, so that when you kill off microorganisms or you get a toxic exposure like mold or things like that, your body can eliminate it.
Right.
And so there's that huge gap in the middle. So I always try and educate people, and I listen to what they're doing, what they're trying, what they're taking, so that I can give some input. Again, not diagnosing, but, well, you might want to try X. You might want to try a coffee enema or a water enema, or people that are not on board with that. I mean, there's some amazing supplements by Global Healing that help keep your body eliminating properly without really wrecking you. So there's other options for people.
Sure. And
And
when we work with clients too, I recently just had a client last week that has battled acne for
yeah,
almost 10 years of her life. And so when she came to me, she said, well, I'm on spirulactin and I just want to fix the acne. And I said, well, I can't just fix your acne, because
right.
you really are going to have to go to the basics, from your gut to your
Yes.
diet to food
Yeah.
sensitivities, stopping dairy products. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
whole 9 yards. And then even once you start the treatment, I think once you've been through a very chronic illness, you're willing to do any and all of those things
Right.
in, conjunction with each other. But really, even in the healing process, it's not just Ondamed. Like you said, there's ozone, there's coffee enemas, there's, like, I
Mhm.
did 9 liver flushes. It's something you and I talked about. I mean,
Yeah.
all of that stuff kind of works hand in hand to say,
Yeah.
I am going to support this stool from the bottom and give it a good foundation, versus, well, I'm going to just try this here, but then I'm not going to change 8 other things. It's not
Right.
going to work. So you
Well, and I
really need kind of a whole thing together.
It is. And the way I can get people to kind of understand that concept is, okay, go to Western medicine. I'm going in to get my hip replaced. And all I've got is a surgeon.
Right.
I need the anesthesiologist. I need the techs. I need the nurses. I need a team
Yeah.
to do that hip replacement.
Plus, you need the implants
Yeah.
itself.
So it's that seems to be a real easy way for folks that are not used to alternatives to go, oh, okay, it is a team, because not one doctor has the answer. I mean, I've dealt with how many doctors, but and then you pick the pieces. I get acupuncture, I get chiropractic treatments, I get IV supplements. And by doing all those things, then I can tell when my body's depleted or if I need an extra boost on something. But it's so much of it's being educated and learning what your team is and what works for you.
Right, right.
So,
Are you allowed to give, because I know every practitioner is different, but are you allowed to give roughly a range of what it would cost either per session or like a treatment, of 8 or anything like that? Can you give some ranges?
it's really difficult to do that. The sessions are $85 a session. The initial one is $150. Just because we're going to be about an hour and a half, the first one, but typically an hour, because essentially you're referring without referring. So I'm giving the referral discount to your Facebook group. We'll keep it at $85. And then to say the number of sessions, it's so variable. What else are they doing? What else? How long have they had it? What have they been dealing with? Kind of how sick are they? But you're probably, and then it's how aggressive do you want to be? I mean, I can do sessions every day.
Right.
But that's going to add up really quick. And the financial component of it, when we're dealing with alternative and functional, it's an expensive ordeal to take care of yourself. And so I really try to take the time to understand what people can commit to. And so I don't do this 3 times a week for 3 weeks, 3 times a week for 6 weeks. I don't have a blanket answer to that, because some people can't afford that. So maybe they can only afford once a week. I would say initially, ideally, you want 2 to 3 times a week to really get everything kickstarted, get it moving. But once a week is still beneficial. Once a month, not so much. Then there's too many other variables coming into it that are going to beat it down, and you're not going to get your money out of it. So
I remember calling you when I first spoke to you on the phone. I had already been through almost a year of a gamut of conventional medicine doctors and had already been through so much blood work and so much testing and ultrasounds and MRIs and the whole 9 yards. And of course, they couldn't find anything, but yet I couldn't walk. And then I had also, been through a bunch of functional doctors. And so at that point, I had already spent a ton of money in trying to figure this out. And so for me, yes, $85 is, a significant amount per session, but it was so refreshing to hear versus the 250, 300 per session that you even get to talk to a functional medicine doctor or anything like that. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I started this group. Everything on this group, every question, everything is free, because I know, coming from where I came from, how crazy the pricing is. And with my functional medicine background, my dearest friends being, naturopathic doctors and DOs around the world, access to all of it, and it was still expensive. And so for me, when $85, and to be honest, and of course I'm biased, I think Jill is the best out there, but also do say that is really a pretty good price per session.
It is.
What I had heard.
I'm supposed to be charging $125 for 30 minutes. That's what I'm supposed to be charging. But I want people to get better. I want them to have access to things that maybe they wouldn't have access to be able to get their life back. I mean, it's hard when you're a runner. I mean, I don't know if you can see them or not. Everybody always likes to look at those back there. That was my goal when I was bedridden, was to run Dopey at Disney World.
Yeah.
And I did. I was able to do Dopey, which is 4 days. It's a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, and a full marathon.
Right, right.
You know, so to go from
like you, I was a physical therapist for 17 years, fitness junkie. I mean, I worked out, like I said, CrossFitting, you know, super, super fit person. And you go from that, I'm sure a lot of the people in the group will relate. You go from that to all of a sudden being exhausted just running a mile, or, you know, like in my case, working out, and then I'd be bedridden for days, all swollen and just inflamed. So yeah, I mean, it's just the whole world. And I'll have to just preface that by saying I also did twice a week, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
and for the first 8 weeks, I came every week without fail. And
Yeah.
that was a game changer for me. It was
Yeah.
really a game changer.
Well,
and I think
it
with my
is.
daughter too, we did, you know, 8 sessions or 12 sessions, something like that. We kind of did
Right.
them once or twice a week. I can't quite remember, but I'm a firm believer in that. Like, consistency is key. You cannot do a month here, or, you know, once every 3 weeks and then
Right.
say, I'll come back. It's not going to work then, because you're almost wasting your money.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to waste their money.
Right.
There's just so much out there.
Yes. So we'll put the links. You can find, like Jill said, it's ondamed.net, and I will put this at the end of the interview. Jill is in Holly Springs, North Carolina, so pretty close to Apex. Your clinic is called Triangle Transitional Therapy. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, Triangle Transitional Therapy. And like I said, her name is Jill Zadico. I will put all this information, but, you know, just research the Ondamed website, because it'll give you all this information on how the machine works, if there's providers in your area. I remember looking that up as well, and I was able to find who the providers in my area were.
Yeah, there's a provider link in the top right-hand corner. The only thing I would like to share is, if you go on to ondamed.net, keep in mind it is a German company, and so the German to English translation is a little bit hard to understand, and they talk a lot about anti-aging.
Okay.
Well, an American thinks anti-aging is, oh, beautiful skin, right?
Oh, no.
It's you're in a diseased state, so your aging is accelerated.
Right.
So it's slowing down the disease process, anti-aging. So please don't look at it as fountain of youth. It's not. I always have to warn people, because it's a transition. It's just their verbiage being translated to American, and the way they look at anti-aging and the way Americans hear it. So it's very different. So just
which is so funny, because in my world of functional medicine, when you say anti-aging, I'm thinking, you know, mitochondrial health, like decreasing the chronical age. I'm not thinking anything vanity. I'm thinking more mitochondria, and longevity, and things like that.
Exactly. And that's what it is. But American ears, you know, we get it on TV commercials, and, you know, when you're scrolling through, it's anti-aging, will make you look 20 years younger. Okay.
No. So thank you for that.
Be cautious about that.
Yes. Do you have anything exciting or any new frontiers coming up in this space at all that you want to mention?
I don't, now you put me on the spot. My daughter's having twins, so my brain is dealing with brain.
Oh no.
That's my
Jill and I always used to exchange like all the cutting edge stuff, and, you know, me being in the functional medicine space for 15 years, I'm like, you have to try out, you know, this company for their supplements, and then, you know,
I'm really excited about these dots.
Yes. So most recently, Jill and I have been talking a lot about the patches.
Yeah.
acupuncture patches, or as I call them, acupuncture to go. They're phototherapy patches. I've talked about them on the group before. And it's funny because now as I recall everything about this machine, you are dealing with the same meridians, kind of the frequencies of the body. And so those are very exciting things to kind of hear how all of this is correlated in healing.
Well, and they would go in conjunction with each other. From
Yes.
what I'm learning and gathering, I'm still gathering information and getting my head wrapped around it to share with folks. So
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jill. It was a pleasure to have you and to be on this side now, where I was always laying on that table super sick. And, looking back, I wish I had taken a picture. I wish I had taken a picture of us back then, and everyone would be shocked what I looked like and how sick I was. And you probably remember, I mean, just dark circles, sunken eyes, and like just not well. And here we are sitting across each other today in such better circumstances. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I will put all the links at the bottom of this interview for some of the things we talked about. So thanks, guys. Thank you, Jill. Bye.